You chose to live in another country for a reason. So, if this decision were truly right, wouldn't it feel easier than this? If settling abroad has felt more effortful than expected, we need to question the idea that belonging should feel automatic. Once you've found yourself further along in your relocation, many people are no longer asking, should I stay or go? They're asking something a little quieter. Why doesn't this feel like home yet? Why does it still take effort to be here? If I belonged, wouldn't it feel easier than this? Belonging gets treated like a feeling that should show up on cue. Warm, settled, undeniable. And when your actual experience doesn't match that image, judgment creeps in. Maybe I'm resistant. Maybe I'm not integrating properly. Maybe this place just isn't for me. I'm Hannah. I coach people who've moved abroad and are questioning whether they truly belong here. And this moment where effort gets mistaken for failure is one of the most common turning points that I see. This video isn't about convincing you that effort is good or that struggle equals meaning. It's about loosening the definition of belonging itself. Because when belonging is reduced to a feeling, it becomes fragile, inconsistent, and surprisingly easy to lose trust in. Let's start with something simple but uncomfortable. Belonging is rarely a constant feeling, even in places where you do belong. Think about somewhere you've lived before, a place you'd say without hesitation, I belonged there. Did it always feel warm, always easy, always affirming? Probably not. There were ordinary days, disconnected days, days where you felt out of step or invisible or tired, but you didn't question your belonging then because you weren't using your feelings as the sole matrix. After moving abroad, feelings take on more authority. Every moment of effort gets interpreted. Every awkward interaction becomes evidence. Every flat emotional day feels like a verdict. In coaching sessions, this is often the moment someone realizes they've been holding belonging to a higher emotional standard than they ever did before. Belonging starts to feel like something you're supposed to feel into existence. And when it doesn't arrive, you assume it's missing, but effort doesn't always mean belonging. Often it means you're still learning the shape of things. You're translating yourself, your humor, values, the rhythms. That translation takes energy. And when you expect belonging to feel completely effortless, that energy gets misread as failure. You think, if this were right, I wouldn't have to try. But trying isn't the opposite of belonging. Sometimes it's how belonging forms, quietly, imperfectly, without announcing itself. The belief that belonging should feel natural comes from a very specific picture. Belonging as arrival, as ease, as something to have. But what if belonging isn't a state? It's a process. Not something that you detect through intensity of feeling, but something that you notice through continuity. You keep showing up. You keep living ordinary days. You start to recognize patterns. Certain places feel more breathable. Certain interactions require less explanation. Certain versions of you come online more often. None of that necessarily feels dramatic. In fact, it can feel surprisingly unremarkable. That's why people miss it. They're scanning for a feeling big enough to justify staying. And through my work, I've seen people overlook months of steady integration because they're waiting for this really dramatic emotional signal that never needed to arrive. But belonging often looks like function before it feels like comfort. You know how you get through your day. You recover faster after discomfort. You're less preoccupied with whether you belong and more engaged with what's actually happening now. That doesn't mean there's no effort. It means the effort has a rhythm now. And here's the important part. If you measure belonging only through how you feel, you'll always be at the mercy of your inner weather gauge. A hard week can completely undo months of quiet integration in your mind. A lonely day can outweigh 100 neutral ones. That's not because belonging is absent. It's because feelings are too narrow to carry the whole truth. So here's the mental model I want to leave you with. Belonging isn't a feeling you arrive at. It's a process you participate in. And processes don't feel the same every day. Belonging shows up in behavior, in familiarity, in how much of yourself you're allowed to be, even on days that don't feel good. You might not feel like you belong, but you act from a place of increasing orientation. You know where you are, you know how to move, you know how to recover, and that counts. That doesn't mean that you've decided anything forever. You can belong somewhere and still choose to leave later. You can feel effort and still be in the right place or the right phase right now. So instead of asking, do I feel belonging yet? There's a question I often explore with my clients. How am I participating in my life here, even when my feelings fluctuate? You don't need to answer that neatly. Just noticing that belonging isn't a single internal sensation can relieve a lot of pressure and stop chasing a feeling. You stop judging effort. You let belonging be something that starts to unfold just through living, not something that you have to prove to yourself. Belonging is not something that you arrive at by feeling the right way. It's something that forms through time, exposure, and permission to be unfinished. If this playlist has helped you see your experience with more clarity, that's the work it was meant to do. But clarity on your own only takes you so far. If you're living abroad and stuck in ongoing doubt, second-guessing yourself, or quietly wondering whether staying or leaving or recommitting is the right move, this is exactly the work that I do with clients. I help people make sense of where they are without rushing themselves, judging their feelings, or forcing decisions before they're ready. If you want support with this, you can read about working with me in the description below. And whether you do that or not, let this land. Belonging is not a feeling that you're failing to achieve. It's a process you're already inside.